Well, hey guys, today I'm super excited because we get to sit down with my friend Alec as we talk about anxiety. Anxiety is one of those things, man, that has been brought to a forefront of a conversation here in recent years as mental health has gotten even more of a highlight and as people have really started to begin to talk about understanding it and having empathy for it. And Alec here today gives some great resources and some great understanding to the conversation around anxiety. And so we're going to be diving into that today. I hope you enjoy the episode and I hope you find something that maybe helps you or resonates with you. Other than that, guys, if you are listening on iTunes, do me a favor and hit that rate and subscribe button. It means the world to me and it really does help out the show. If you're on Spotify, be sure to click that follow button. Share this on every social platform you can. And if you are on YouTube, click that like and subscribe button. Other than that, my friends, let's dive in to the Coffee with Craft podcast with my friend, Alec.
Welcome to Coffee with Craft.
Awesome. Well, hey, Alec, welcome to the show today. How you doing, man?
Doing all right.
Doing all right.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, buddy. So you guys don't know Alec Dalton maybe super well, but I have the privilege of having lived with you twice in our lifetime.
2 times.
2 whole times. If that tells you anything. We did it for, I think each period was only like 3 months.
Right. You left me, and then
you
left me again.
No. That's not how it worked. So we lived together one summer, me and Alec did, in college. When I chose to stay and work one summer, and he chose to stay and work one summer, and we found ourselves chilling in a house together for 3 months, and then he moved on to off-campus housing and left me and disappeared off the face of the earth until I moved back to off-campus housing, and we lived together until he then decided to, I don't know, get married and not put me in the wedding.
You know, the resentment there is really starting to hold over.
Oh, is it Alec? I had no idea.
I can only say I'm sorry so many times.
Oh, man, joking aside.
There is an important quality or character trait for you to work on is first forgiveness.
Oh, forgiveness. Oh, man.
I've repented and...
Have you repented? Guys, the sins of Alec Dalton run deep. I don't think you understand like how great his sins are. I want to tell you guys a story.
At this point, it's just I'm considered tainted. I don't really think that.
Oh, man. I'm so glad we're starting off this episode lighthearted because I feel like we're going to get deep later, and we need to. But before I have Alec introduce himself, I want to tell this story from my perspective. Me and Alec were driving to Chipotle one night on our second stint of living together, and I was in this weird season of my life where like all my friends were dating somebody and I wasn't. I'm still in that season of life, man, where now they're not dating somebody, they're married. But I was talking to Alec about it, and I was like, man, I really need my bros to step up, because I was really big into How I Met Your Mother at the time. I was like, I need someone to be my Barney and to wingman for me well.
With the playbook.
With the playbook and everything. And Alec was like, you know what, Eric, I'm going to step up. I got you. And so we walk into Chipotle, right? We walk in, and lo and behold, there's 2 girls who are at the front of the Chipotle line who went to our university. And I was like, oh no, this isn't going to end well. And we walk up there and they see us and they're talking to us. We know them and we're having a casual conversation. And Alec was wearing this really awesome Stormtrooper t-shirt. It was a really great shirt. It was one of his staple outfit t-shirts, was the Star Wars Stormtrooper t-shirt. And one of the girls goes, hey, I really like your shirt. And Alec goes, oh, thank you. And then Alec turns, looks at me. And mind you, I'm just wearing a V-neck, like, striped t-shirt. Nothing fancy, nothing
Classic
great.
craft.
Huh?
Classic craft.
Classic craft, just a classic V-neck t-shirt with stripes on it. And my hair was probably poofy at the time. Tremendously so back when I had the fro. And literally, Alec looked at me, looks at the girl, looks back at me, looks back at the girl, and I go, oh no. Like, inside I'm screaming, and Alec goes, hey, Eric has a nice shirt too. And the girls awkwardly laugh, and I go, oh. I remember getting in the car with you afterwards and berating you.
Well, I don't understand what went wrong. You had a nice shirt on, so I don't really see the problem here. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was one of the moments where I realized Alec lucked into marrying his wife and should no longer be anyone's wingman.
No, I still have my own playbook. Like that's number 7.
That's number 7 in your playbook.
You never gave me a chance to use the other ones. So.
I don't want to know the other ones.
Well, there's still time, so you never know.
Still time. Dear Lord. But anyway, joking aside, that's a little bit of Alec from my perspective. Alec, tell the people who you are. Let them know a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff.
Oof, okay. So my name is Alec Dalton. I am married to my wife, Sierra Dalton. We have 2 small children, Samuel, who's 2, and Lawson, who's 1. We live in Erlanger, Kentucky. I am a licensed mental health counseling associate in the state of Indiana, so I work over in Lawrenceburg, Indiana at Community Mental Health Center. And I've been there for the better part of 3 years probably now, as an intern first, and then I was brought on full-time as a staff therapist. And while I've been there, I've served as a number of different roles. So I did some group counseling work for patients who are in recovery from addictions. I've done a lot of individual counseling, working with patients who are trying to heal through trauma and anxiety, depression, addiction, some exposure, not tons of exposure, with patients who have had more serious psychiatric conditions of schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, those kinds of things. A lot of work that I've done has been from a cognitive behavioral therapy standpoint. It's kind of the primary backbone for most treatments from a counseling perspective these days, just because it tends to be the most evidence-based practices. But I am currently in a transition phase of life as I'm taking steps to pursue a career as a physician assistant, which is what they would call a mid-level provider. So you have your physicians or your doctors, and then not really below them, more as kind of alongside them, you'll have your nurse practitioners and your physician assistants who are able to diagnose and treat conditions and kind of serve in all different areas of healthcare. So I'm kind of all over the place, really. But that's a long-winded summary of who I am, I guess.
That's awesome. And I brought Alec onto the show today because I really, guys, I wanted to have a conversation that I believed is super important, especially right now, because as we're recording this, we are on the offset, kind of coming out of what feels like a large portion of the pandemic. We're still in it, but stuff is starting to reopen. We're recording this in July, and we're really starting to maybe see another side of this whole thing. But in the midst of this, my kind of life motto has been, I don't think anyone is thriving right now. And if they are, I think they're faking it. Because I know I personally, guys, I haven't done well in the midst of this pandemic. And maybe you haven't either. Maybe you struggle with depression, or maybe you struggle with anxiety, or maybe you struggle with things that have become a part of your new daily routine. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe a family member lost a job. Maybe you've had to work from home and you've had to manage children on top of trying to figure out how to get your work done. And you have these new rhythms that were really traumatically brought onto people. Like, I don't think people realize, like, what happened overnight was actually trauma, like, inducing. And
even the people who've lost people due to the pandemic. I mean, families have been rocked by everything that's been going on with actually, losing family members and loved ones due to the illness that's been going around. So a lot has been going on.
Man, it has been crazy. I know, as somebody who works as a pastor in a local church, like I've even walked with people who have lost loved ones for unrelated reasons in the midst of this pandemic, and how difficult it's been for them to grieve and have actual grieving processes because the whole world's turned upside down. And it feels like it's just another domino that's been knocked over on a sequence of dominoes that are crazy. But in spite of all of that, I wanted to bring Alec on to have this really authentic conversation around anxiety and mental health issues, because anxiety, it's one of those words I feel is tossed around a lot that people struggle, like people say they struggle with, but I don't know if people have like a really good working definition of what anxiety is. So I was just curious, Alec, if you can describe from your perspective, your professional perspective, of what anxiety is, and then how can we start to combat anxiety as it approaches our lives?
Sure. So if we were in a setting right now, let's say we pretend you were a patient of mine and you were trying to understand anxiety, I'd actually ask you to define it for me first. So I'm going to do that to you, Eric, here on the mic. When you think of anxiety, what do you think of?
Yeah, so when I feel anxious in my own personal life, I start to get like really fidgety, and I start to maybe even get like a little paranoid, and I start to get restless. I feel this feeling of restlessness overtake me. And sometimes, like, man, I've experienced that and not been able to pinpoint what's making me anxious. You know, like I've experienced the moment where I've gone, oh, like I'm feeling restless right now. And I've been able to like call it out and go, I'm feeling anxiety about something, and start to like process that and go deeper or whatever. But for me, it's this experience of intense restlessness, or sometimes even paranoia of like something's wrong and I feel it.
Right. So, and that's very common with anxiety, is those symptoms. And, you know, you can have anything on a range from kind of that trembling or that nervousness or that achy feeling all the way up to, you know, more serious like panic attacks, and to the point where it gets so overwhelming where you shut down, right? But I think the challenge that we're already starting with when we define anxiety, just in common language, we're talking about symptoms.
Yeah.
We're not talking about anxiety. We're talking about what happens because of anxiety.
Ooh,
and I think that that's a really pivotal thing that we need to focus on first, is when I'm trying to, even as a clinician, when I'm trying to understand anxiety, I can't just look at the symptom piece, because if I treat the symptom, ultimately it's not really going to, it'll help me in the moment.
Right.
But it's not going to give me long-term care for what's actually bringing that on. So we have to kind of shift gears a little bit to think about what it actually is my anxiety. So where is that coming from? And I believe, and this isn't necessarily a textbook definition, this is more my personal take, is that anxiety comes mostly from our insecurities.
Ooh.
Okay?
Yeah.
So bear with me while I try to break this thought down
Absolutely.
a little bit. So if our identity, who we are, whether that be in our work, in our families, in our faith, who we are, that very much is going to shape how we approach anxiety, how it impacts us, how severely it impacts us. So if I am totally 100% invested in my work, if I feel like that is what defines me, if I'm just saying I'm a therapist, that's what I do, the day I get fired is the day that I'm going to have the worst anxiety, possibly triggering even depression in the aftermath of it, because my security was all based in the idea of the work I do. This pandemic has really shown that in a lot of ways, because it's shown where we had security or where we thought we had it.
Yeah.
And then we've had so much taken away from us because of everything that's going on. I think that's obviously made a lot of people struggle even more with a lot of, whether it be anxiety, depression, bringing up some of those past trauma experiences. I mean, it brings it up. When we go through something that challenges our security, our beliefs, that's when our anxiety really spikes up. Now, it doesn't have to be a major thing either. That's the thing about anxiety, is it can be a buildup of little things. Like, you know, you have a rough day at work, you come home, the house is a mess, and then you've got cat pee to clean up because they missed, or that, you know, your kids, they're fighting, or I mean, it can be just a snowball effect, really, of the little things that add up, and that causes anxiety to spiral out, and that can lead to depression, anger issues, a lot of that kind of behavior. So I hope I'm making sense here, but I think when we think of anxiety, it's really, and I don't mean this to sound in any way like it's your fault.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
That you're causing the anxiety, because that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that our anxiety comes from our fear of losing what we feel secure around. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, I think. Let me speak from like a personal experience and relate to that. So, and you know this, I went through a very kind of dramatic job change about 2 years ago. And I remember when I left that job, how much my world turned upside down because my identity was rooted in my job title, right? Like who I was as a person, everything about me was Eric is this. Not Eric is a bunch of other things, right? Like, but Eric is his job. And when I lost that job, man, I spiraled for like 3 or 4 months. And I remember like I was doing like just dumb stuff all the time. I drove to Tennessee on a whim one day because I wanted to run away. Like my anxiety got so bad that I was at a point where I was like, I need to run away. And so like I drove to Tennessee. I stopped 4 hours into some random Wendy's on the side of the road. I ate a cheeseburger at this Wendy's, and I got a text from my boss saying, hey, we need to meet tomorrow about something at the time. And I was like, I guess I gotta go home. And I turned around and I drove back. But like that's how like deep and like crazy it got for me for a moment. And I think so much of what you're saying is true. Like when we lose security, or when we've lost security, anxiety really starts to ramp up. So I love that. And even during the pandemic, when I lost the security of things I would enjoy, right? So like I lost going to the movies and going to my favorite restaurant in the Cincinnati area. It's a place called Brothers. I love this restaurant. Me and you have been a few times. I would spend my Friday nights. Friday nights were me time before the pandemic started, where I would go to Brothers. I would go for an early dinner. I would sit at the bar. I would have myself, a burger or a sandwich or something that I really wanted that day. I would eat my meal. I would have a beer. I'd be like, this was great. And then I'd go see a movie because Brothers in the movie theater are right next to each other. And movies were my time to decompress because I pay $20 a month for this thing called AMC A-List. And what it is you get 3 movies a week for $20 a month. And you can see any movie, any format, IMAX, 3D, their Dolby Cinema, whatever you want to do. You get 3 movies, That's awesome. $20, 3 movies a week? Heck yes. Overnight, that was gone. And I was like, well, this sucks. Can't go to the movies anymore. Can't go to my favorite restaurant anymore. And I found myself stuck within these 4 walls. And I remember I started losing it. I was like, I have no reason to get up in the morning if I'm just literally going to be in my apartment all day.
Right.
I don't have to film, and I don't have to do anything for my job except film people. That doesn't happen until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I can just sleep all day and stay up all night. Cool. That's what I started doing. I started developing these really unhealthy habits that were signs of when I used to be depressed. And I was like, that's not good. And so for me, I had to start figuring out ways to cope with that and work around it and find a reason to get out of bed every morning. That was the big thing for me. I had to find a reason to get out of bed every morning. And so at the start of the pandemic, there was a coffee shop in the area that I love dearly. That's a missional community coffee shop. They literally, their proceeds go back into the community. They're a non-for-profit business that seeks to bring hope to people who are hopeless. And I know the friend who manages that shop. And I called him up and I said, do you need help? He was like, yes, but I can't pay you. And I said, okay, I'll be there for free coffee. And he says, that sounds perfect. And so it gave me a reason to get up every morning and to really start to work myself out of this depression or anxiety and things that I was struggling with. And so that's kind of how I've dealt with it in the past, and maybe even in the midst of this pandemic is really starting to go through all that. But I would hear from your perspective, what are healthy ways for us to combat anxiety when it starts approaching our everyday lives? Because man, if this pandemic has taught us anything, It's that life is uncertain, and we're probably going to experience something, maybe not like the coronavirus again, but we're going to experience a loss of security again.
Right.
So when that happens, how do we combat that?
It's one of these things that we're not just talking about it's not like a sore throat. You go to the doctor and they'll give you a medication and it'll be over and fixed in a couple days.
Yeah.
We're talking about a state of mind and illness that flares up and impacts every aspect of our life. So a lot of times counselors or in counseling, you'll hear something about the wheel of wellness.
Yeah.
Okay, and essentially it's the concept that you take every aspect of your life, your personal life, your social life, your emotional life, your spiritual life, your occupational life, your just every aspect of life, and you weigh it out to see how is it balanced, what areas need work. And the reality is when we're struggling with anxiety, when we're struggling with depression, when we're struggling with bipolar, symptoms of trauma, all these things, it impacts all the areas of our life.
Yeah.
So to answer it and how do we cope with it, how do we deal with it, it's more about how do I learn to care for myself? How do I learn to heal throughout the rest of my life? I'm not just talking about your 3 sessions with your counselor aren't going to get it done. We're talking about long-term care.
Yeah.
Essentially taking care of your soul. Because I think really, and this is something that in a counseling setting you probably wouldn't get to until you were maybe like 20 sessions in or something.
Right.
Just because of how much trust, how much work needs to be done to be able to really invest and be at a point where you can reflect that much. And some people get there a lot sooner because they're working on their own to do that. But
right.
I really think at the core it goes back to how am I able to identify myself is going to translate directly to where is my security in. So I mean, this is it's no secret probably that you're from a faith background, I'm from a faith background. So obviously that's going to be our rock center of that should be where our security is. It's not always. And I mean, we both could go back and forth about how that's been challenged many times and times and times over. As far as what we do in the day-to-day to take care of it, though, ultimately, so I'm going to bounce off your story for a minute, because I think our gut reaction is to do what you were talking about. When our anxiety is up, when we're feeling so overwhelmed by everything going on, we want to run.
Yeah.
We want to get away from it. And not just get away, we also want to isolate.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with anybody.
Absolutely.
Nothing is more damaging, more harmful, more triggering to anxiety. Nothing makes it more severe than when we isolate. Same thing with depression. When we isolate, when we shut down, it's just fuel on the fire. Oddly enough, that's what our brain tells us to do, though, is to get away. Yeah. And it's mainly the illness or the condition or the state of mind that we're in. It's pushing us to shut down, because if you think about it like a living thing, that's what it lives off of. So it's going to tell us to do that. Yeah. So what we have to do is really work to have healthy relationships with others that show us genuine, loving care. Yeah. So that we can learn to do that for ourselves. When we do have those moments. We have to develop, and there's ultimately, when you first start counseling, you're going to have sessions about coping skills. Like, everybody wants to talk about coping skills, and, there's definitely a place for that. You need to be able to, when you're feeling the intensity of your emotions, to be able to reflect on a place that made you really feel peaceful, so that you can help yourself kind of enter into that peaceful state. You need to be able to distract your mind enough to give yourself a break, to be able to, like, if we were to a real simple one that I'll do with patients just to get started, because sometimes they'll just be going and going and going, telling me about all the things that they're worried about, and I'll just say, stop, Okay? I want you to pick one thing in the room. I want you to try to describe it to me in as much detail as possible.
Yeah.
And so they'll look at my office and they'll usually pick the bookshelf or a picture that's on the wall. And so I'll go with a picture that's on your wall. And I'll try to describe this briefly. There's a snowy setting in a forest. There's a wooden barn. It's a mix of a lighter brown and a darker brown. And up above on the barn, there's a white window with a trim around it. I'd guess it's maybe about 8 inches thick, and it wraps all the way around that window, and then it has 2 big brown doors that you would pull open if you were to walk into it and shut. It looks like there's a stony rock base around it.
Wow.
And then at some point,
yeah.
So I can do that because I practice it on the reg. All right?
Like, you're describing that in such detail. I was like, man, like, that is... I bought it because it looked cool. I didn't, like, even go into that detail when I bought it.
What were we talking about before I started doing that, Eric?
We were talking about coping with anxiety.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Do you remember the sentence I said right
I don't.
before? That's the point. Okay? That's the point of that skill, is because it's very intentional that it gives you a break from whatever was really causing you stress. A lot of times you won't remember what it was right off the bat, and that's nice to just have a break, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges, the most exhausting thing when you have anxiety, is it just feels like it never stops. Your mind is always running around those things that are in your head, or there's new things that keep coming up, and sometimes we just need some rest. And not sleep. I'm not talking about you need to sleep. I'm saying you need to mentally have a break.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need to be able to do things like pick something out and just spend time describing it. You can do the same thing in Scripture, like meditate on the Word and be able to just really reflect on what it is, explore the context, try to understand the meaning behind it. I've always said, with coping skills, there's no real textbook way to do them, and I want you to make them your own, okay? Because that's the only way they're useful. I'm sure everybody's on the planet at this point has done a breathing exercise at some point.
Yeah, my Apple Watch tells me to do it all the time.
Okay, right. For the longest time, I said I hated breathing exercises, okay, as a counselor, because I think, mainly, 1, I didn't practice it enough, and 2, because I didn't make it my own. Everyone would tell me, like, this is how you do it, and I'd do it and it wouldn't work. I'd be like, well, that's terrible. Like, why would I try to do something that's not working? Until I decided, okay, I'm going to do mine to a song that I like, and I'm going to change how long I breathe in and breathe out to suit my breathing, because your breathing pattern's different from mine. Because
our bodies are different.
Right. You have to make these things actually apply to you. And that's how you get through the day, is you can take coping skills that you learn from counseling or the internet or wherever you get them from, but you have to make them your own. Yeah. You make it personal, and that's what makes it helpful, is because you're able to say, this is what I'm going to do in this moment if I'm feeling this way. And in that way, it gives you a lot of power over your anxiety, too, because you have a plan. Yeah. You're not just in a situation where, like you were saying at the beginning when you were describing it, I don't know what this is, I don't know what to do. Yeah, you know what it is, and you know some things you can try. Yeah. And if they don't work, that's great, because you're able to say, I know that tool doesn't work. Yeah. I can tune it up, I can find a different one that will work. But again, I'm going back to the concept of, we're not treating something that you're going to fix in a couple days. Yeah. This is a lifelong thing that you will have to upgrade your tools, you'll have to find new ones, build new relationships. Absolutely. That is what comforting anxiety is about. It's about long-term care, not about the quick fix. Absolutely, because at the end of the day, reality says, like, there is no quick fix, right? Like, I have honestly probably struggled with anxiety my whole life. Like, I could probably trace it back to when I was younger and stuff like that. Don't know the triggering point. We'll just blame my parents. They were great parents, but I'll blame them anyway. Jokes aside, right? But, like, when anxiety comes, like, now that I have really pinpointed it, have sought help with it, have gone through help with it, and when it comes up, now I'm like, if I'm feeling restless, I need to, like, shut off technology.
Like that, like that's one of the first things that gives me, like, I know, like when my anxiety ramps up, like I'm on Twitter. Like I hate to say it, but like, man, if you've been on Twitter throughout any part of this pandemic, it sucks. Like you get on, you're like, all right, what new thing is broken today? Like that's what we get on, right? And I realized for like my own sanity, man, I had to shut social media off for like a large part of my day. Like I had to be like, all right, you know what? I can keep TikTok on my phone and make funny videos throughout the day, but like Twitter, you have to go off the phone, and I can't open you on my computer for a while. And like, hey, Facebook, like you need to be taken off my phone for a few days as well to like really, and it's cutting out stuff, right, that is bad for us and replacing it with stuff that is good for us, right? And so, man, like one of the best things I did throughout the entirety of this pandemic when I was really feeling anxious, I just went to the park. There's a beautiful park 5 minutes from me where I live, and man, like has a beautiful view of the city, has a beautiful view of all of Cincinnati and the river and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the park. I'm gonna walk the trails. I'm gonna find a place to sit, find a place to read, maybe listen to an audiobook, and I'm just gonna get out, right? Because I needed to like really like, one, I had to stay away from people, but I knew I needed to get out of these walls. And I found that really helped me. And so I love what you said, right? Because it's about making it your own and finding ways to cope with it. So I really enjoyed that.
And I'll add one other thing onto that too.
Yeah.
Because I can almost hear people listening that's starting to say, I don't have time to do that, Eric. I don't have time to do that, Alec.
Absolutely. And
what I want to challenge those people to try to think about, I want you to let yourself do those. You let yourself. And what I mean by that is so often we're quick to say, I don't have time to go to the park. I don't have time to take 10 minutes out of my day to do some guided meditation that the counselor threw at me. I don't have time to. And what I want to say is you have to let yourself push aside the other things for you to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
For those that might be listening who are always taking care of others, you have to let yourself take care of yourself. For those who are constantly worried about if their income's coming or if they're going to be able to manage the kids on their own today or whatever, those who are constantly worried or thinking about things they've lost, you have to let yourself have the opportunity to heal.
Absolutely. And that's with anything in our health, right? Like we have to let ourselves have moments where we can really get to be better and focus on things. I'm going to go to a pastoral perspective because I'm a pastor. I remember one time I was sitting in a room full of people and we were talking about devotion time and how important devotion time is to the walk of a Christ follower. And there's a mom in the room. She wasn't a single mom. She was a mom. She had a really awesome husband. Her husband's great. She's a great mom. She had 2 awesome kids. Like they're a really good family, but she was very much lamenting over the fact she's like, as I do, I struggle like with my kids and with stuff to like take care of them and to get stuff done. I struggle with getting my devotion time in. And we started, processing through that and working through that. And I got some flack for this from some of the older people who are like, you haven't had kids yet, so you just don't understand. And I was like, but the underlying principle of what I'm saying here is true. Is I'm like, man, like you have to like really start to analyze your time if you want to let yourself do something and you want to get better. It's almost like taking a time on it. It's like, hey, did you spend 15 minutes scrolling through Instagram today? Cool. That's 15 minutes you could have been like doing something for your mental health. Like whether that's exercising, whether that's breathing exercises, whether that's taking a walk, like whatever it is, like that's 15 minutes. You could have done something for your mental health. It's really starting to be intentional with how you spend your time and what you're distracting yourself with, I think, too.
Right. And I think that's the key point there is, are we distracting ourselves or are we just trying to get away?
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter, all of it is a getaway to try to avoid it. And while they're good platforms, I mean, I use them.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's one way we stay connected. But when we turn to that consistently as our escape, as our break, it is not a break because it continues to fuel the parts of your brain that are most weary, most broken down.
Yeah.
Which is why whether you set aside a few minutes take it out of your Instagram time, or if you make it a priority every day at work that you use part of your break for mental health care, if you're a morning person, not me, but if you're a morning person and you want to get up early to do that, again, it goes back to making it personal for you.
Yeah.
You are the only one that has the ability to make the time for you.
Absolutely.
And it has to be you. I can't do it for you. Eric can't do it for you. It has to be you letting yourself have that time.
Yeah.
And that's so pivotal for you, for your family, for the work that you do, whatever it may be, because it gives you a minute to recenter, to remember where your securities are, where you lean on, who you are. It helps you define that when you actually give yourself time to be you.
Yeah. Man, that is so incredibly good. Hey, I want to ask one final question today.
No.
Just
kidding. Go ahead.
We have to laugh because this is very deep stuff. But it's a question I think is important. Because in my conversations with a lot of different people, I have people all the time who, especially in my line of work, working with students and stuff like that, who will go, I don't buy into that anxiety thing, or I don't buy into depression, or I don't buy into this. Like, people just need to toughen up. You know, I hear that phrase a lot, which that phrase in my heart like makes me want to punch somebody. I'm like, oh yeah, all I need to do is toughen up. How about I toughen up with your face?
Right.
But you know, like I hear that stuff, right? And then the skeptic in me and the person in me who questions a lot, and who starts to really analyze everything, and who loves to look at culture, starts to ask himself this question of, is there validity to this idea? Because at the end of the day, what people are really saying behind that idea, that I believe, is they're saying we've romanticized or we've elevated the mental health issue and not the mental health solution. You know? And I was just curious your thoughts on that as a counselor, and if there is like, hey, like, you know, the solution, do it.
Right. You know, I wish there was the solution to the problem, but I think, you know, what you were talking about, first, it's always going to come back to, at the beginning, understanding what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Those people who say they don't buy into it, they don't accept it, I wonder how much they know truly about what anxiety is, what depression is. I mean, a lot of it, too, in a lot of circumstances, it's not the person, it's a brain chemistry issue. That's where psychiatry comes in, and that treatment is, you know, I'm always going to lean on, and this is just pretty common practice usually, that counseling is your first option, because, you know, we don't want to push medicine more than we need to.
Right.
But there is a place where you need medical treatment sometimes to manage mood, to manage how we handle situations, because the brain chemistry, the genetics of how we're wired are sometimes putting us at a position where we're not as able to manage. At a disadvantage. Right. So I think that's a good place to start in understanding this, is that it is a combination not just of our experiences and things that have gone on in life, but also there's some genetic pieces there that predispose us to be more likely to having struggles with certain issues, whether it's anxiety or depression. But in terms of have we, I think the word you used was romanticized it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think we've romanticized it. I think the trouble is the reason why we don't have, you know, the obvious solution is because we still don't really know. And again, this is my experience and what I've seen. You can go to counselors who will help you learn the coping skills to manage day to day. You can see a psychiatrist who can help you manage symptoms day to day. We don't always know, though. Just like, you know yourself best, we don't always know what the root cause is for anxiety, for depression. I've had a number of patients who battle anxiety today, and even the ones who can point a cause. So a lot of trauma victims will battle and struggle with anxiety through their lives, and you can pinpoint that one.
Yeah.
But the reality is you still have to take care and comfort and heal daily through the rest of your life. It is not, do we romanticize it? No, I think we're still struggling to figure out how to take care of it an effective way.
Mm.
We're still trying, and we're getting there.
Yeah.
Like we have counseling, we have mental health treatment, we have medications that help patients. We're just not able to do all of the work that needs to be done to help a person heal completely. And I don't know that we'll get there, to be honest with you, because again, we're going back to the understanding that this is a chronic condition. It's something we're always going to be taking care of, trying to help ourselves heal throughout our whole life until our life is done. That is what one of our things that we bear.
Yeah.
One of the crosses, I guess, that we bear. But I hope that answers your question.
It does. I really do. I appreciate that perspective, because I think there is a lack of education around mental health issues, just in general. And so I think the more we can learn together and the more we can pursue holistic health together, really the better. And so, dude, this has been a great conversation. As always, when we get together, it's always fun, and I enjoy my time with you. Hey, any last words to the listener before we sign off for today?
As we've talked a lot about anxiety specifically, I think anxiety is one of the more noticeable of mental health conditions. Yeah. It's because of the symptoms that we talked about at the very beginning. They're very obvious. They're ones we're able to pick up on. Depression is another one that's really obvious to us when we're starting to feel it. And true depression is just very crippling. But I think they're often related. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it's all the more reason to really understand, one, that we're trying to battle something around our identity and shaping who we are, and in a lot of ways we're building faith. We're trying to find who we are and where we stand in things. But one of the things that I think I see so often is we beat ourselves up for being anxious. We get so mad that we're so depressed and we can't get up and keep going. We have plans, we have things we want to do, and we just can't get going.
Yeah.
And that's so defeating because we blame ourselves for that. And one other thing that I guess I want people to be working on and doing is blaming the illness and not blaming yourself. Because I think you need to, as part of that work to be able to identify yourself, you have to separate your identity from your mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much our modern day spiritual warfare, in that if we let our depression or anxiety define us, then that will rule, because we are saying that is us.
Yeah.
That is our fault. We have to get over it. And society tells us that we got to get over our depression or anxiety. And that's just not the truth.
Yeah.
Because it's an illness. As much as a sore throat is you, that's what we're saying essentially, is that anxiety is your problem.
Yeah.
Just like you caused that sore throat, you caused your anxiety. That's the equivalent. Right. And that sounds ridiculous to say.
Yeah.
But that's essentially what we're doing. And so I hope that people are able to start and continue to be able to say, even on the worst of days when they're really struggling, I want them to literally blame their anxiety. Like, people are, you'll hear some people that are like, you're just blaming your anxiety or your depression. I want you to do that because I want it to be something that's separate from you. I don't want that to be a part of who you are, because I think that destroys the beauty in a lot of people.
Ooh.
So,
man,
that'll be, I guess, good. My final thought on that. But
dude, that's so good. Alec, once again, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you a whole heck of a ton.
Thanks for having me.
Even when you're a bad wingman.
Horrible wingman. I would not pick me ever. To be a wingman. But, I'll try. And
he's tried, ladies and gentlemen. But, so appreciative of you, so appreciative of this conversation today. Hey, if you are struggling today, just want you to know you are loved, you are cared for, you are valued. Because of the nature of this episode, the suicide hotline is in the show notes and description of this episode. If you are struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out for help, because you are loved and you are valued, and we are better with you being here. Other than that, guys, I just want to say thank you again for pulling up a chair to the table, and thank you for having a conversation with us on the Coffee with Craft podcast. I'll see you next time.